Hey everybody, welcome to the Q&A session for Jump Cannon. And I think, yeah, Jeff Neal had already asked three questions. If we want to jump into those, his first question was, has a name been chosen yet? The second question was, what is the approximate testnet month of launch? And then the same question for mainnet.
I can try some of these things. So the name has not been selected yet. Hopefully, within a week or two, we can answer that question. The Generally speaking, the mainnet launch is scheduled for end of year, and it might slip into next year because in the past we've learned that making like a major release at the end of the year is probably not the best thing to do. So we expect end of December, beginning of January for mainnet, and then end of November, a month before that for testnet. And the couple of months before that will already slated to have a like experimental future net, so it's just like a dedicated test net to work with smart contracts on. And just for the full loop, we also expect that by the end of this month, you'll already be able to deploy contracts locally in a sandbox using the SDK. Does that
That's
answer
very
your
cool.
question,
The
Jeff
future
Neal?
net, very cool.
Let's get people to ask questions in voice. It's more interactive.
Yeah, go ahead and submit a request to speak if you'd like to ask a question. We will pull you on up, put you in front of the class. While we wait for people to, oh, never mind, we've got a request. All right, Life Learner.
Yes, thank you. What do you see, or do you have any initial projects in the pipeline for the end of year when you do the release?
Sorry, can you repeat the beginning of the question? I missed that.
So let me try again. Do you have any projects in the pipeline for the initial release?
We're talking with several companies that are interested in building on Stellar. I can't disclose names right now because nothing is finalized. But like um the usual suspects of like AMMs and various lending protocols.
Right. Yeah. Keep those requests coming. Tomer, do you think we're going to see DAOs being established through the smart contracts?
I'm sure we'll see DAOs. Yes.
What is the first DAO you would like to see?
I would like to see a DAO for a DAO building platform. So a DAO of DAOs.
Cool. Yeah. Great answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm stealing this from Jason, our COO. He's also expressed an interest in the past in having like a DAO DAO.
I mean, it's got a ring to it, DAO DAO.
John Jove, what's going on with the token contract?
It's in progress. It exists, although I actually don't think I've posted anything publicly really about it. I mean, Lee and I were just talking about it a second ago, but maybe I should actually post a link to the repo it lives in. Um, but
You should tell us a bit about the token contract.
I mean, there's not a ton to say. It's a token. It looks a lot like an ERC20 token, with the exception that like everything is done in the style of EIP 2612 permit. So there's lots of signatures being passed around. That makes it really flexible. What is built so far isn't actually like compliant with the spec that we published for it. But I'm going to work on getting it closer to spec in the next couple of days. So probably by like, I don't know, I don't want to say the end of this week, but the end of next week, it'll probably be pretty close and pretty reasonable. It won't have all the functionality, but it'll be pretty close. I'm going to post a link to that in Jump Cannon right now. So give me a second.
That's awesome.
But it works. I've tested it locally. It does seem to work.
And can you share with the audience what is the story with EIP 2612? What does it improve on the ERC20 contract?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, this EIP 2612, which I always refer to as EIP 2612 permit, because permit is like the target function that this whole thing was done for. Basically, it was an improvement on the classic ERC20 approve flow. So, basically at the beginning of the whole ERC experience or the ERC20 experience, what you would do is you're like, okay, I have this contract, I want to interact with it. I'm going to approve it to transfer balance from my account. And so you submit a transaction on Ethereum, you wait for some confirmations, and eventually you're like, okay, this is final and we're happy. And you submit another transaction that actually does that actually lets the contract interact with the contract, one might say. And so basically you first paid gas to do the first thing, and then you pay gas to do the second thing. With EIP 2612 permit, you do this all as a single transaction by just passing a signature to this permit, like a signature to this to the contract in the first place, and then it uses the signature on the permit function, and the permit verifies the signature and then does the same stuff that approve would have done. So it's basically this like ergonomics improvement. And so kind of everything here works like that. So you get that kind of ergonomics improvement everywhere. There's
So
a few other reasons to do this, but
So would it be correct to say that EIP 2612 basically uh, uh, like separates the kind of like who's submitting that transaction from like who's authorizing the moving of the funds?
that's exactly right.
Okay.
A
Cool. And
lot
we've
of the
seen that
conversation
adopted.
around, sorry, you want to go? Do you want me to go?
You go.
A lot of the conversation around EIP 2612 was around this this gasless concept, basically. Like, I shouldn't need to have an account that has money in it, basically, to do stuff or has ETH in it. And so this really, like, these kinds of me passing around a signature and letting somebody else act on it makes these kind of gasless concepts much, much easier.
Very cool. That's exactly what I was about to say.
We have another question from the audience. And sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Jason Godev asked, given that Stellar has some built-in operations that serve off-chain scripts and apps already, what use cases will smart contracts serve that is not possible with the current SDKs?
So the current SDKs are just like extremely, or the current protocol consists of around 20 high-level operations, which doesn't really allow you to like express a lot of things. So say for example that I want to introduce an AMM that's built on a curve that's not supported by the native AMMs on Stellar, like StableSwap. Or let's say that I want to have like a like a trust minimized lending protocol, or kind of like a non-trivial size DAO that does that has like stake weighted voting, trust minimized. So all of these things are like not really doable today.
Great. If anyone from the audience has any questions, feel free to drop them into live chat, the text channel, or you can go ahead and request to be on the stage and ask your question through voice.
Maybe in the meantime, Lee can give us a quick update on what's the status of the SDK. What should we be expecting for this like July iteration? And what are you, Lee, most excited about?
Yeah, I mean we're still working on the SDK. John has proven that you can build something with it, which is fantastic. At this point, the API is still relatively unstable. So I mean, as we talked just before this event, I'm adding things like iterators, slicing to vectors, and there's certain things about the API Vex that are probably going to change in the next few days to make them more ergonomic, to make them safer to use. And so we are really still, the SDK is really young. We're still making a lot of changes to it, and by the time we come to the end of July, hopefully we have a lot of the building blocks, the primitives there in a somewhat stable state.
Even though the SDK is in flux, I do want to emphasize that it is quite sleek. Like, the stuff that works when it's pretty cool. It's very kind of easy to use. So I had a good experience working with it.
Is the SDK something people can look at right now today, or has it yet to be put out into the wild?
I mean, the code is public. It's on GitHub. It's just go to github.com/stellar, and I'm sure you'll find it. The docs aren't up yet. Anywhere in particular for it just yet. So if you're looking for docs, then that's not out yet, but we should have docs out with the July release at the end of July.
Yeah, and John's token contract is actually a really good starting point right now because it uses the SDK. It's fairly readable and ergonomic and well organized.
For someone who's maybe not familiar with the way that Rust works, Tomer, like if they do go look at John's token contract, what should they look at first?
So at any Rust I don't remember the lingo, but you should look at the lib rs file because that's like the entry point for any code that is not executable.
General good guideline for looking at like a jump cannon contract written with the SDK would be to go and find a function with the text contract FN directly above it. If you see that, you know that's an entry point to the contract, and then you can go and see what it does by following that through. In my particular case right now, like Tomer's advice was good. All of those functions are in lib.rs, but I actually have a refactor that changes that and puts them all off into a separate file. So that would still allow you to find the right stuff.
And I think the other thing to look out for too is you'll also see types that are that have an attribute like contract type at the top of them, and they're all types that will end up either in the API or will end up being stored. So if you're familiar with like the Ethereum API or like what types that get generated in other ecosystems, looking for that contract type tag are types that are going to be interesting for you to look at.
Lee, can you talk a bit about testing in our contracts? I know that testing is like a big issue in the world of Solidity smart contracts, and there are a lot of frameworks to facilitate that. What's my strategy as a person who's like developing for Jump Cannon?
Yeah, it's a great question. We really want testing to be like really smooth. Mostly because we want people to write tests. Whenever there's a barrier to entry to writing tests, let's admit it. As engineers, it's tempting not to. So, write tests in terms of a jump cannon contract that's written in Rust will be tests that you can run locally on your computer in your IDE. So if you're using an IDE like VS Code, you'll be able to just run those tests like you would any other Rust test that you're writing. And in that test, you'll have access to a host that acts very much like the runtime environment that your contract will actually run on chain. And the reason it acts very much like it is because it's actually backed by the same code, because the runtime environment is written in Rust in Stellar Core. And so we basically import that into the test and we're running the contract within it. And much of the mechanics of that, we're still working through that. And John and others are really help identifying like where the gaps are that we need to fill in to make it work as smoothly as possible for everybody. But you'll be ideally be able to construct a couple of contracts and then run them in your test and then inspect. Here's the state of the ledger after running them, and be able to write assertions about, okay, you expect the balance of this account to change by this much, or the balance of this token for that account. I mean, and it'll be all running locally on your system. And you'll be able to, which means you'll be able to, step through debug, inspect the values of variables and different things like that.
Step through debug on a smart contract. That's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see we have a bunch of people joined. We are talking about Jump Cannon, type of stuff that we're going to see coming in the next few weeks. And we're happy to take questions.
We have a question in the text chat from Matthias. He says, with smart contract support, I wonder if you see a possibility to build an infrastructure like layer 2 of app chains / side chains using Stellar as their layer 1.
Yeah, definitely. We also had some folks looking at potential, like what type of crypto primitives do we need to do ZK rollups in an efficient manner. So I don't think these are things that we're going to see immediately, like at launch this year, the beginning of next year. But with time, we definitely expect more sophisticated L2 constructions to show up. These will probably take the form of ZK rollups. And the cool thing is that you can actually, like the ZK rollup can be something else from Jump Cannon. It can obviously be like the same execution engine, but it can also be something like an EVM. So you can have like an EVM rollup running on like a Stellar base chain, which is pretty cool.
What about you? Same question that you asked Lee. What are you most excited about for the launch of smart contracts on Stellar? Like, what would you most like to see?
I really love the fact that the SDK like builds on Rust, so you can use like the entire ecosystem of Rust tooling there at your disposal. So you can do things like use Rust tooling for fuzzying, or the type of testing frameworks that Lee pointed out. And most of all, I'm just like really excited to see what others build, and what are the things that we're not thinking about right now.
In terms of getting other people to build, we're just starting to think about this, but like, someone wants to get involved, what's the best way for them to start getting involved?
So right now, I would say that things are kind of like all over the place in terms of you can start reading caps. I would, like I said before, I think the best entry point right now is to John's contract, because it's the most like comprehensive and up to date Jump Cannon contract, and just like learn from that. We are working on a set of docs that should be live by the end of this month. And these will relate to just like learning about how this whole thing works, some examples and tutorials around how to like write a basic contract and use the SDK. It will really be focused on like the local sandbox developer experience. So you don't need to know funny enough, you don't really need to know anything about Stellar in order to start developing for this. You don't even need to have to be talking to a Stellar network. All you need is like this local sandbox that's in the SDK.
I also have another question from Matthias. In terms of infrastructure, what would be your top #1 priority for smart contracts projects? As he's thinking on Stellar mainstream adoption, timeframe Q3/Q4 2022. So infrastructure, the #1 priority, allow people to build smart contracts.
Yeah, I would say that the composable like DeFi Lego blocks, so things like AMM, specifically the type of AMMs that we don't have natively in Stellar, things like Stable Swap, things like Uniswap v3. Definitely interested in seeing things like Compound, and I would love to see some infrastructure to start building DAOs.
No one on this call has this question, but definitely when I start to talk to people about this process, the first question that people have is like, "Oh, is this EVM compatible?" Can you just give a brief like highlight about the choices, the tech stack choices, and why we made them?
Yeah, sure. So we actually put out a blog post a couple of months ago around why we decided to go with Wasm, and we outlined a few options that we considered, but ended up not going with. The EVM is like the big elephant in the room. Obviously, it's on a bunch of different chains, from Ethereum to Avalanche and others, but the bottom line was that we were looking for something that we can really scale the network with, and the EVM is has a lot of good things about it, but there are some kind of like glaring issues that we didn't really want to ignore. One of them is that it just doesn't lend itself well to parallelism, which is something that is very important for us moving forward with the type of real world scale that we're looking for. The other thing is that there were just a lot of foot guns in the EVM, and a lot of ways to unintentionally do the wrong thing. So we wanted to make sure that we build something that is, it's batteries included. You don't need to, like the token contract that John is building right now is going to be kind of like the native default way to build tokens on Jump Cannon. So you wouldn't have to do stuff like deploy your own ERC20 contract, which in the Ethereum ecosystem, everyone just goes and like copy pastes the Open Zeppelin ERC20 contract and a lot of other contracts as well. So there's a lot of small things where Ethereum is not like EVM is not the friendliest for developers, and we want to make sure that we're building something that's friendly for developers and built for the future.
We have another question from Matthias. EVM compatibility. You just need to build on EVM compatible using Jump Cannon smart contracts like Aurora.dev or Near. Something to think about to bring to some Ethereum projects. I guess not really a question so much as a statement.
Did end with a question mark though.
Yeah, in my defense. And I posted the Wasm blog and the live chat channel.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Aurora is a really interesting example of I think both Near and Avalanche recognize that EVM is not really what they want to build on, but at that time, from their perspective, like the way to get to market was to have something EVM compatible, right? So Avalanche came up with the C chain, which is EVM compatible. Near came up with Aurora, and like these are fine projects, and they really show how like the developers of the chain themselves don't necessarily think that the EVM is the way to go, but they put in something. Aurora is a complete EVM that runs as a smart contract, which is a very interesting approach. It's pretty wasteful, both in terms of kind of like time and space, but it also kind of like ruins the benefits that you get from Near, right? Because now you can't actually, all the sharding and the parallelism that you get from Near, you don't get in Aurora, right? And if you look at the actual TPS numbers, then they are like extremely low. So I think there's like, there are pros and cons to every approach.
All right, and Moots has joined the chat. Moots, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just hoping to ask about an update towards Cap 55, I believe was the number. I think the last Stellar dev chat we had was on some of the fee mechanics, specifically the underlying state expiration. And I know that was a few weeks ago, and with July 4th and all, I wasn't paying a ton of close attention. So I was wondering if there was any updates you could provide. And I know it might not be fair since Nico's not here. But just kind of regarding that.
Yeah, that's great. Nico's not here, so we can talk shit about Cap 55. I would say that we haven't. There are some internal efforts to come up with like opposing caps. So I think that Cap 55 in its current form, we all acknowledge that it's a huge. It's different from anything other than you have out there, and we want to make sure that we consider all the alternatives before taking such a step. So the cap Moots is talking about is Cap 55. It's around fees. Most of it is around gas and metering and or metering computation and kind of like state allocations. That is the less offensive bit about Cap 55. Cap 55 also presents this idea of like state expiration, which is that state can expire after a specific time if it's not used or not touched, which is great in terms of making sure that the ledger state size is manageable, but introduces an additional level of complexity for contract developers to have to actually both for contract developers and for users to make sure that important state just doesn't like disappear into the abyss. On that topic, I highly recommend a talk given by the Geth lead developer last month in Prague around this kind of like time bomb that's in basically like any EVM chain out there, which is like the state is growing in a rate where commodity hardware won't be able to handle it soon enough, and a lot of the EVM chains out there that are just kind of like cranking up the TPS numbers, they're just gonna hit that wall a lot sooner. So we want to make sure that we're cognizant about this issue and have some strategy to mitigate it.
Cool. Thanks for the update.
And we have a question from Jason C. How is development of linking Stellar Classic tokens and their potential smart contract equivalents looking? Will Classic tokens and their smart wrapped versions be interoperable in the background? Or will developers need to create their own wrapped versions that users will need to trade between?
This one's for me, I can tell. So this is a good question. And oops, hitting the wrong button. The interoperability really comes from the contracts that or rather the contracts that other developers build. The native token contract that we're going to provide is going to have good interoperability between classic assets and smart assets. So, basically, if you use that and, the contract that you build is compatible with that contract, the native contract, then you're good to go. But like, let's say that you like some other kind of, token, on Ethereum, there are more types of tokens than just ERC20 tokens. Maybe that's not a good compatibility fit for you, and then you don't get the interoperability guaranteed. But in like the most basic case where you have a Stellar asset, classic asset, it's like a fungible asset, like it's a Argentinian peso, for example. Then like you should expect to have excellent interoperability with the smart contract, assuming that the native contract we're providing is widely adopted. I'm seeing the same question regarding NFTs. Sorry, I think I just cut you off, John, but I think you were just going to read that question out, right?
Yeah, I was going to do that. I was also going to ask if Jason was the COO, and then ask that question.
With regard to the NFTs, Tomer has asked me the same question about like what we should be doing for like NFT interoperability against like classic NFTs. And I basically told Tomer like I haven't thought about it and I'll think about it in August. So I don't know the answers to that question yet. Tomer might have some insights on that regard in terms of what he thinks should happen. So I'll turn it over to Tomer here.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question that we need to figure out. I don't think Fred is in the audience right now, but I would love to get Fred's take on it. Whether we need to have this like opinionated like default NFT contract. The type of NFTs that you can issue and buy on Lightman today are still interoperable with Jump Cannon in the sense that any token from Classic is interoperable through these like wrap tokens. The question is, do we want to introduce like a native representation on the smart side, and what form should it take? Should it just be like this regular token with with like 0 decimal places? Those are open questions, and I think we need to kind of like survey NFT contracts in the ecosystem to better understand that. And that's like John said, that work is slated for next month.
Right. Matthias has another question. I'm glad he labeled it as a question for me. Are there any current education Stellar partners, such as Stellar Quest or the like, working on training and or education in preparation for Jump Cannon's launch? Smooth onboarding for devs.
No, not yet, but that's definitely planned. Like I said, right now the docs and the materials are just like not in a place where it's easy to onboard. But it's a very top priority for us to get there.
I think maybe Seashells wanted to be in the recording. So Seashells has wished us all a happy Thursday. We have Pantheon wants to speak. Here you go.
I don't know if you can answer this quickly or not. It's more of a security question as to do you see any security flaws with this platform or any potential issues? Particularly right now, if the current security flaws, if someone gets a hold of your secret key, your wallet's exposed. Would this smart contract be kind of in the same situation where if someone has a secret key access, that the whole smart contract is now exposed, or?
I would say that smart contracts introduce a lot of they allow contract developers to write arbitrary code that is deployed on chain. It definitely is more powerful than the current protocol, but it definitely gives developers some more rope to hang themselves with. From the actual platform security perspective, we're planning on multiple audits to ensure that the platform itself is safe. With that said, it's impossible to enforce safeness in the protocol level, and it will be up to developers to ensure that the contracts that they write are safe. We are going to publish a lot of information on how to maintain security. And we are also planning on a grants program that will include grants for auditing. But at the end of the day, how should I put it? Like shitty code will exist and it will be unsafe.
Yeah, you can never stop it, but
Yeah.
I just want to know the likelihood and like sort of the system that's being created, the possibility of that happening. But overall, thank you for answering that.
We have one more question from the text channel. Can you talk a little bit about anchors and jump cannon?
Yeah, so from the anchor's perspective, they don't actually need to change anything about their offerings because the type of assets that they're dealing with are classic assets, and they can so nothing really changes about the on and off ramp. If they're they could, if they choose to, on ramp directly to to the smart side or allow off ramping through that. But we expect wallets to be able to efficiently move assets between these two sides, so that is not necessarily a required thing. For issuers, even issuers of classic assets could, with their existing issuer authorization, they can move to mint over on the smart side for the same asset, the exact same asset. One advantage of that, we hear a lot from issuers that Stellar's model of like implicit minting through payments is sometimes a bit idiosyncratic for how they do things on other networks. And the nice thing about the standard token contract on the smart side is that there's an explicit mint operation, which makes things a bit more palatable. So maybe we'll see issuers move to minting on the smart side, but I'm not sure. So I think we passed the 35-minute mark, and if there are no other questions, maybe we can call it a day.
If you do have other questions for us, come find us in the Jump Cannon channel. We're you can probably tell that we're in the dev channel all the time, but talk to us in the normal one, and we'll definitely respond to you guys.